I think many of you know that this is probably one of my favorite slides. And I keep using it, and I keep bringing it out, and I keep using it because learning is a joy, isn't it? Or shouldn't it be? And I think that's what all of us want to rekindle in the educational systems across the world. I know that most of you are rekindling this with your learners. I know that you're doing it already. I know that many of you are getting brilliant feedback from your learners. So yes, this is our mission and quest in life as educators, to bring back the joy of learning. And for those of you who don't know me, us, because there are some Neurolanguage coaches here with me, we really are bringing in this dichotomy of merging teaching and coaching. And it's quite interesting because, you know, teaching is very directive, telling people, teaching knowledge. How do we bring in coaching, which is meant to be very spontaneous, and it's meant to be getting it from them? But certainly there has to be a transfer of knowledge because you are the experts. And we do it in a totally different style. And that's how we keep this coaching approach in everything that we do. We are coaching when we're transferring knowledge. And that's where you get this segment in the middle where we are the heart of teaching and coaching. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, let me just give a little bit more of a pointer. We are connecting coaching and the neuro to language learning. In fact, we are connecting the coaching and the neuro to any learning with the Neuro Heart courses as well. On the left, you can see everything that's coming in from the coaching side and professional coaching accredited by the International Coach Federation. And on the right side, you see what we're bringing in from the neuro side. And that converges into the process of neurolanguage. So my question to all of you to start Saturday morning and get you all thinking, why learn a language? Let's see what you think. What are your reasons, passions, desires, visions for learning a language? Sanella, to visit the country, feel the culture. Oh, Virginia, I love it. The limits of my language are the limits of my world. Yes. Yeah. Sue, to communicate. Monica, to connect. Pilar, learning different perspectives of life. Anna, yes, communicating. Luminita, languages offer so many possibilities. Yes. Larissa, this freedom. Donna, to travel. Maria, to be able to communicate. Yes, so a lot of with this communication, new perspectives, to live a better life. Yes, now can I say for many people across the world, we are talking about opening doors to living better lives. So it is a survival question. It could also be an existential question. For others, it's very focused on the communication, but for others, it's very focused on the perspectives of life. And I think that's a beautiful thing to open up the mind, the brain, because there are so many perspectives in life. So let's just dive into this. Why go into the brain hacks? So I actually did the first presentation on brain hacks last November when I was in the BSIG conference in Gdansk. And I did a mini workshop on brain hacks for business learners. Why? Because, well, you know what? Learners of today and I'm probably focused more on the adult learners, very stressed, very busy, a lot of pressure, no time to learn. They need target language fast in many, many circumstances if they've got meetings, projects, etc. Also, if the company's not paying for their sessions, for their classes, they need to, as we say in England, pull their socks up and get going fast with the language. Can I suggest as well that now we are going to add to the list the battle against AI? How do you all feel with ChatGPT? Any of you feeling a little bit threatened? Ladies say yes. Thank you for that. I saw. So I think as well, maybe we can add to the list of why learn a language, we as humans. We come back to that quest of really demonstrating our humanness. And especially now in this era where we're coming into instant translation machines, ChatGPT creating whatever, and being able to communicate as humans, we have to demonstrate that this is going to be irreplaceable. So learn a language or languages, and why stop at one? What's stopping us from learning many? And you are the advocates, you are the ambassadors for language, helping learners across the world to understand the reasons for learning. So, what can we do to provoke brain hacks? Well, I've sort of taken it in two different directions. Firstly, we can talk about the brain and how we learn a language. Secondly, we can move into learner autonomy and helping them to discover self. And thirdly, we can then go into those tips for faster language learning. So we're going to take it step by step this morning. Firstly, looking at talking about the brain and learning. Anna, yes, I love that comment. ChatGPT is faster, but humans can do the same, but needs more time. May I suggest that what ChatGPT cannot do is bring in the empathy, the compassion, the heart. And again, we come back to that human touch with what we are doing. Everything that we do has that humanness with it. So, moving into talking about the brain and learning. You know, language learning it's an all brain experience. For many, many years, we had this division of Broca, Wernicke, and a lot of emphasis on those areas. Now we know that, yes, comprehension, production, left, but actually effective communication, right, and language fluency, cerebellum at the back. So it's an all brain experience. Any type of learning, however, we could simplify it. And we could say that everything is first port of call, frontal part. Frontal lobe, we have working memory, short-term memory, executive functions. And as we are absorbing the language, it's getting more and more deeply stored. So we could say it's a front to back experience. And when we are retrieving, it's the other way. So back to working memory. Now, interestingly, I wanted to add this research about Dutch courage. You know, when we are learning a language, when we are speaking different languages, alcohol, we know, is something that actually is when people normally flow. We lose inhibitions, we suddenly get the courage, and we call it Dutch courage. Now, this is in fact when our prefrontal cortex is disactivated, if you like, and then we get that language fluency, because all of the brain, it's a little bit like when we go into the flow state. In the flow state, we have this transient hyperfrontality where this prefrontal cortex is inactivated, and all the rest of the brain is then playing and able to freely communicate. And that's where we have this flow of language. Now, one of the major points when we are with learners is the question, when is it going to become normal for them to speak the language? Normalizing a language is actually maybe a bigger question than language fluency. I don't know about all of you, but even though there are certain languages that I speak extremely well, there are still moments where I get tongue-tied. And then normally moments where maybe I don't feel so comfortable, maybe I feel threatened, and that's when you really can feel it. I confessed to all of you the other week, I had an interesting experience because I actually went, for the first time in my life, I've lived in and out of Spain, and I would say that I'm pretty bilingual in Spanish. But I actually went to do the C1 exam. I need it actually for some, let's say, bureaucratic reasons. And it was quite interesting to sit in that oral examination and to experience from the other side. We're all used to being on one side, but not on the other side so frequently. So sitting there, I was actually observing moments in my brain when I was maybe starting to clam up or nervous, and I was self-observing my levels of nervousness and how they were coming and going. Now, there was one moment actually where I felt that the examiner was nervous because she wasn't Spanish. And I think there were moments where she was feeling threatened by somebody who was actually very fluent in Spanish in front of her. But then there was a moment where I couldn't find a word, and I noticed my brain was, oops, here we go. So this is the question, at what point does it become normal to speak a language? And how can we observe when we are losing that capacity? What is it that's triggering us? And this is very, very important for learners to understand as well. I know in French, in German, I might not be perfect, but I'm fluent. Because for me, it's normal just to trip from one language to another, to another, to another. It's normal for the brain. And the brain doesn't mind if it's perfect or not perfect. Because my brain, I guess, is trained to just communicate. At what point can we get our learners to actually feel that as well? So identifying threats, identifying triggers, training them to come into that happy state, reward state. Now, I'm pretty sure that many of you know the cold learning cycle. And the other day I was actually reading this book by James Zull, The Art of Changing the Brain. And I kind of found it quite fascinating because he connects the learning cycle with learning a new word. And it's quite fascinating, these steps. So first step, when you hear or see a new word, that's giving you the concrete experience. Suddenly then our brain tries to scaffold. So you're reflecting. Then you try to see, well, is it something I have to generate a new concept for, or is it something that I have to connect with something else? And that's when we go into this abstraction. Then when we start to use that word, you've got the active testing, trying it out. Until finally then you're seeing it, hearing it in different contexts, maybe in the teacher's response, And there you're creating the new experience. So maybe this is what we're trying to embody every time we're bringing that new to our learners. And maybe we need to ensure, how do we get them into recognizing each step? Could we get them to really highlight, okay, this is new for me, new experience. Let's get you reflecting. Maybe we can push them into that reflection so that they then start to go into abstraction. Then we get them actively to use it, speak it, produce it. And then we are using it with them. Something to think about there. And we know language, there is so much passive intake. The more we expose the brain, the more we bombard the brain to the language, the more passive intake is coming in. More than we even realize. Remember, 90% is coming in through the subconscious brain. 90% of learning is coming in through the subconscious brain. So we need to understand the difference between the different neural networks. We need to understand this front, back, back, front. We need to understand the need to produce, pronounce. We need to move from receiving to producing, passive to active. Absolute key. Key to make it stick, to embody it. Now, we're in this part where we're talking about the brain with our learners. So we've just introduced language, general terms, and we do need to think about motivation mechanisms. We need to think that, our brain will only really stick information that is relevant and emotions. And here we have to understand that intrinsic is always going to be much better than extrinsic. I'm not saying that people don't learn with extrinsic. They may. They may want to get new clients, make more money, get a new car. Fine. Is that the passion, the drive, the motor for learning? Let's go for it. Let me get you a model car and sit it on the desk every time we meet. But definitely, if it's an intrinsic reason, for example, to help children to have better lives in the world, that passion and drive is really going to be the motor. So we have to move away from this, I can motivate my learners. No, we can't. We can be passionate, we can be educators that are enthusiastic and entertaining and amusing and funny and make them laugh and make them have a good time, but that doesn't mean we change their inner motivation. And we also have to move away from, this is the reason I want to learn, and pushing them into passion, vision, drive. I was in the IATEFL conference this week. Some of you I met for the first time over there. And I demonstrated very quickly a motivation conversation. And I was asking a lady the reason for learning this new language that she was learning. And then I pushed her into that vision. Imagine you can speak fluently. How's that going to change your life? And everybody in the room witnessed how suddenly her face lit up. She went into the biggest smile, and you could see that she'd connected with the vision. That's what you're looking for. That's going to be the lever for the learning process. Remember that, in essence, we are like sports coaches here. We're trying to discover what is it that they want to really achieve. And when I say really achieve, I mean the trophy, the world record, the match, the World Cup. Sports coaches have a very easy life because they know exactly what that team, that person wants. We have to find it. And more often than not, if you find that vision and drive and mission, you're going to get much more commitment. Now, obviously, this is one of our key conversations in neurolanguage coaching. So we have to go into the motivation. We have to talk about the mechanisms of motivation in the brain. We also have to look at psychological safety. Many of you do this and have done this on the course with me. We have to be able to explain to people fight or flight. I'm not going to go into it in detail today because we've got so many other things to look at. We're looking at brain hacks. But I do think one of the secrets to actually helping people to learn fast is helping them to manage their reactions. If we can help them understand the triggers, we can help them to auto-regulate and come back into quicker recovery if that happens, like me in my exam the other week. I'm smiling, everybody, because that was the oral that I mentioned to you all, but the written one, I felt like a teenager because I did so much crossing out and so much scribbling. I hadn't prepared anything. I just went in there naked and I hadn't got enough paper. And it was all official paper. So in the end, there were scribbles everywhere and I came out there feeling like a teenager again. It was a good feeling, but I'm not sure how the examiner will feel when they see my paper. So just reminded me of that. So we have to understand how to coach people around the emotional triggers, how to talk to them about blocks. And again, there you see, I don't know why, but I've really brought out the alcohol a lot today. Must be because it's Saturday and Saturday evening, we'll probably all get the bottle out. So acute alcohol consumption may have beneficial effects on the pronunciation, debatable there. But also, it is about helping our learners to simplify things, chunk things down, check in along the way. So that psychological safety with us is every step of the way. And they know it, they feel it. Now, the other thing that we are trying to bring in is for them to become aware of their brain. And this is the reason that we talk to them about the brain, because we want them to understand you can learn how to learn. You can empower your autonomy. You can really commit to improving the way that you learn because of your knowledge about the brain. You can fully understand how to enhance language learning. And there is a mistake of the spelling there. I have to go and check. And metacognition is being aware that you're aware. We want not only us to be aware, but them to be aware as well. So, still talking about the brain, absolutely the brain is a connection machine. Scaffolding is the technical terminology. One of the major missions that we have right at the beginning is to understand which language family they're coming from, what other language families do they know, how can we springboard them, how can we provoke those connections. Now, it's quite interesting when you've got, for example, I've worked with German learners in the past learning Spanish, and I've done it through English. However, there are moments where I take them back to German because there are sometimes elements from both. For example, the verb patterns in German, where they have ending changes of the verbs, are more similar with Spanish than English. but there are terminations of words which are absolutely coming from the Latin, which is embedded into the English. So again, it's about you provoking the connections, helping them to springboard. And we know from the research that when we are learning a new language, our brain is trying to scaffold. By the way, remember that was step 2 in the learning cycle that we saw earlier. Scaffolding. And here it's also about getting curious. I know many people, when they come to do the course with me, there's always that moment when they say, oh, but I don't know my own language. That's okay. Hands up and let's discover it together. There are many times where I've had to say in the past, oh, let me think about that. Is it like this in English or is it like this? And really seeing how to get them to connect in, but talking it through with them. And when you've got curiosity from both sides, you've got dopamine. You've got positive reward state. So curiosity, I think, is the key. And when the more curious you get, the more enjoyable the process is. And the more they want, by the way, because they're getting the dopamine kick. And the more we want, because we're also getting curiosity and dopamine. That's the research demonstrating how we go to their native grammar structures first. And we're trying to use those to springboard in. Quite fascinating when you are learning new languages, just how you could sit there and brainstorm, okay, what are the things that are exactly the same? And then what are the things that are totally different? What are the things that don't even exist? You know, for the English brain, coming into cases, I think is one of the biggest nightmares on earth. And how can we help them to scaffold? You know, when we know that our brain is a connection machine, when we help them to try to take a strong connection with something and connect it to a new piece of information or to a weaker connection, the question for us is, how can we help them to make that weak connection stronger, or to loop it and scaffold it with that strong connection? And this is one example that I came up with. Probably I could show my learners those two pictures, the house, home, and the fireplace. And my learner is actually learning Spanish. And what we're looking at is this word hogar. Hogar actually means the fireplace or the home. Mi hogar, my home. And what I've done there is try to connect them with house, home, taking those words, taking those two letters that word starts with, to then get the brain to trigger into the new word quickly. So we're taking that strong connection and we're trying to get them to loop in. And I would say if you've got learners that are struggling with words, or even with sentences, or even with phrasal verbs, or even with idiomatic expressions, how can you help them to connect from a strong to build up that new connection? Food for thought for all of us. And of course, chunking it down. This is one of the mantras of neurolanguage coaches. Chunk it down, chunk it down. Our brain goes into overdrive if it sees one big blob, one big mess. That's when you're going to go into that fight or flight. Very old concept from Mr. Miller, 1956, in his book, the magical number 7 plus or minus 2, he came into this beautiful deduction that 7, so 9 or 5, those are the chunks that we're looking for, but the average chunk, the working memory, is most effective with 7 as the average. By the way, Mummy Dog wants to come and say hello. So today you've got both of us with a little bit of a Saturday morning salute. So breaking it down, breaking grammar down, breaking functional language down, and getting into SMART goals. ¿Te vas a sentar? Ves por ahí. Ves por ahí. Venga. Ya está. Ya está. Hablamos en español. Okay, and relating, connecting, making it relevant. This is what the brain loves most of all. We're talking about brain hacks, and definitely this is one of the secrets. The more relevant, the more real, the more personal, the more it's going to stick. The more you can get them to use it, contextualize it, the more it's going to stick. The more you can get them to relate to the language and even to the learning process, talking about the learning plateau, the moments when we all feel that we're not getting anywhere. Again, we come back to that being aware, that you're aware of the process of learning a language. Understanding that even though we don't feel the process, the subconscious brain is actually doing a lot in the background. And here we have a beautiful segue into conscious and subconscious learning. You know, as we said earlier, the vast majority of learning is taken in at the subconscious level. When we separate out explicit learning, implicit learning, we know that explicit is very much focused on theory, rules, data, rationalizing, analyzing, and very much a frontal lobe activity, frontal lobe learning process. Implicit, when we're bombarding that subconscious brain, we're not aware of what's coming in. Even when we're getting into those flow states, definitely coming from those subcortical areas. Again, helping learners to understand the difference is key. How many of us know that our learners think that going away and doing something by themselves is battling away with homework? For an hour, 2 hours, I need to do homework. Actually, no, you need to go and bombard the brain with the language. You know, one of my favorite, I'm going to say, topics is this mysterious experiment by DARPA, part of the US military and the Navy SEALs, who apparently are getting people to learn a language in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And they seemingly are putting people into flotation tanks, which obviously takes them into very deep states, possibly delta even. And that means they are literally just bombarding the subconscious brain with that language. Now, it's a military program, so we don't have all the details. I'm sure we never will. But if any of you are interested, it is actually in the book called Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler. If any of you are interested to have a look at that a little bit more, there's a little bit of information in that book about it. So that particular experiment or that particular process that the US Navy SEALs, the military, are doing demonstrates that subconscious learning is key. Now, again, speaking to learners about this, I would say is imperative, because we think that learning a language is only battling away with the rules, the theory, the grammar, and then speaking. It's much more than that. And when you couple explicit with implicit, I would say that's when you've got the learning bingo. Again, when I look back in my life, for example, Catalan. Gemma, you're our Catalan representative today. Yes, and Agnes, you're also the other one, representatives of Catalonia. Catalan literally came in through my watching television. Never had a lesson in my life, but it was years when I was here. I think it was the 1980s. I'm showing my age now. That was when TV3 first started, ladies, I think, if you remember. And it was the only television station with anything worthwhile looking at. So everybody watched TV3. And that's how most people actually came into learning Catalan, myself included. And now when I look back, I mean, obviously at the time I didn't realize, but when I look back, that was pure subconscious learning. Absolutely. Can I write it? No. Can I read it? Yes, because it's very similar to French and Spanish, but I can't write it. I can speak it when you push me, but then I have to be, and with a glass of wine, I'm much better than without. Because now I have the infection of Italian, Spanish, French, and Catalan. So I have this hybrid mix of Catalan, which is quite unique when it comes out. But again, what I'm saying here is that I look back and I see through my life which languages came in through the implicit learning, through the subconscious brain, and they were Catalan, Italian, German. And the one that came in through explicit was French. And the one that came in through both was Spanish. Which one am I bilingual in? Spanish. I can read, write, speak, live, breathe, dream, Spanish. And that for me is the proof. Explicit plus implicit is the key. Now, brainwaves, very, very interesting topic. Those of you who do the course with me, you know that I'm fascinated about this. By the way, we now have the research demonstrating, and this is the research from Gorka Bartoloma, who was at the conference some weeks ago. We have the research demonstrating that non-directive coaching provokes alpha and theta brain states, which provokes creativity. Because in those states, in the alpha state, that's when you access gamma, which are the aha creative moments. Now, this is what we're looking for. When we are with learners, we're looking to provoke different brain states. When I want you to think about the rules, the theory, I want to get your prefrontal cortex engaged. I want to get you in predominant beta. When I want to get you in the flow state, I'm pushing you into those alpha states. So definitely brainwaves, absolutely key. Now, we've already spoken about DARPA, we've spoken about television. You could also think about as brain hacks, and these are now brain hacks that we're really thinking about. You know, if you've got learners, I had one of our coaches in Ukraine, and Natalia, if you're looking at the recording afterwards, I'm saying a big hi to you. Natalia was learning Greek, and I met her in the December, and in the June, 6 months after taking the course, after going through all of this with me, she spent 6 months listening to Greek music and Greek songs. And she said to me in June, Rachel, you wouldn't believe how much I've learned. Just through that subconscious input, music. Again, speak to your learners, the power of music, the power of radio, the power of television, even having visuals everywhere. Remember, the brain is taking it in, even if you haven't noticed consciously, your brain somewhere has noticed. And therefore, why not put the phone? Why not put the computer? Why not put things into the target language, reading in the target language, etc., etc. The power of seeing and listening without seeing and listening. Remember, 90% is coming in through the subconscious brain. So now we're moving a little bit into learner autonomy and ownership. And let's have a little bit of I'm going to put the screen with all of you, all the ones that I can see. How many of you like to learn, but you don't like to be taught? Yes, thank you, yes. Nabila, I can see you. Donna, I can see you. Alexandra as well. Ina, Becca, Marisa as well. Yes, Pilar. Fantastic. Karen, yes. I hadn't seen all of you earlier. And Sue, I can see you. Yes, we're having a little bit of a visual break. Now, this is I think, may I say that I personally think that 99.9% of the population do not like to be taught. None of us like it. So the way that we do it in a coaching style, in a non-directive style, in this very interactive way is key. And the way that we're throwing it on them to take control is key. Now, I'm going to talk about control in a different sense in a minute. This is about us taking that step back. This is about less of us, more of them. Yes, we are going to find out from them, what do they need? What do they want? What are their goals? We're going to help them to create the roadmap, but we're getting the stuffing is from them. We are just creating the skeleton around that. And we're also going to help them to learn what to discover themselves. Lots of permission. Non-directive coaching is the key. And this constant involving. Remember the Benjamin Franklin quote? Involve me and I will learn. So let's just take it back one step, because one of the major functions of our brain is actually to survive. So one of the key questions, and I think it was Josip earlier, you hit it on the head. For some people, learning a language is about actually getting a better life. It's about survival. It's about existence. How can learning be important for life? Because that's going to get the brain really into that learning process. But at the same time, when we are in that sort of mode of survival, we want to be in control. And this is, again, what we need to bring to the learner, the feeling that they are in control. The more that they feel that they are in control, the more that they're going to feel safe and happy. And that's coming from the survival instinct. So the learner setting their own goals, setting their own actions. How is that possible when we are the experts? We have to turn it on its head. We have to create a goal-setting process where it really is coming from them. And in neurolanguage coaching, that's what we do. And we have to get them doing it. Doing it, doing it, doing it. The one who does the work is the one who does the learning. We have to stop doing it for them. Co-creation, sitting in the space with them. And this is pure coaching. When you sit in the space, it's one of the ICF competences, coaching presence. It's almost like you move into that improvisation, but the improvisation is within a skeleton framework. You have the framework, but you're dancing, and they are doing it. And so much research demonstrating right from the 1980s that when people self-regulate, when they set their own goals and they are regulating themselves, they get more goal attainment, achievement. Now we have research saying not only that, they also get student well-being as well. Proven. And helping them to discover themselves. Now, you know, I love this journey of the learning styles because it's been proclaimed as the god of learning, and then it was debunked as the neuro myth. So from its glory days in 2012, when it was proclaimed as learning best when the material is represented in the dominant sensory style, we've actually gone into this science of learning, where we know that the more sensory input, multiple sensory input, will bring a better, improved, impacting learning experience. Yes. However, I still question if some people have preferred ways of learning. I do. And when I say preferred, I mean a way that I know if I do it, I instantly retain it. If I don't do it, it goes in one ear, out the other ear. So I need to sit and write. If I sit and write something, I've got a photographic memory. If I don't, it could take me many times to listen to something. And I remember when I was at university studying law, I stopped going to lectures because I would go to a lecture and just go off on my own trip for an hour and a half. Because I was so bored with the lecturers, what was the use of me sitting there? So in the end, I gave up, went home, sat and wrote for an hour and a half. And that's when I got it. Took me a while to find that out, by the way. I wasted a lot of time, lecture time, doing that. But I think it's about us helping our learners to discover what is effective learning for you. What's going to be impacting learning for you? Now, I have to say as well, for me, it's visual, written, visual, verbal, and writing, more than listening and writing. Maybe you have a learner who has a different combination. Maybe you have a learner who likes to read aloud, and that helps them to make it stick. Producing, listening, producing. Everybody's different. And here we are coming into neurodiversity a lot more nowadays. That's why, yes, we have the science of learning. However, we need to discover our learners, and they need to discover themselves as well. And your provocative questions, the way that you help them to discover themselves, is key. So, moving now into this provoking fast learning, you know, everything we've said so far is contributing to these brain hacks. Talking about the brain, talking about conscious, subconscious, bringing in that conscious, subconscious exposure, etc. And brain hack number one really is tricking the brain. How do we get the brain to understand the importance and relevance of that learning? By the way, this could be for any topic. How do we trick the brain that learning mathematics is important? Ha, that's a big question for everybody nowadays. survival, usefulness, emotional impact, bizarre curiosity, frequent recall. All of these could be ways to trick the brain. Interestingly, when I did the BSIG presentation, I used this slide as well. And one of the ladies asked me, what is bizarre curiosity? And I reflected it back and said, well, isn't that what you've just had? You were curious enough to question and ask, what is bizarre curiosity? Well, that's bizarre curiosity. That's what you're looking for, making it so that it is something that they're going to go, what? And get curious about it. So tricking the brain is interesting, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it in a positive way, that you're helping them to, again, discover the importance of the learning. And fast learning, well, let's just sum up some of the things we've said before. Cognates. Even learning sounds before words. How many of you know that beautiful, funny, hilarious video of the translator that goes into the meeting? And she speaks, I think, 13 languages. But in fact, yes, Alexandra, she doesn't speak any language. She just goes into the sounds. It's hilarious. If you don't know it, I do recommend it. Find it on YouTube. I can't remember who the lady was. If any of you remember her name, I think she's a British comedian. Absolutely brilliant. Do put it in the chat box for me if you know the name, everybody. So learning sounds before words. By the way, I think Luca Lampariello sometimes does that as well. If any of you know of Luca, he is. Catherine Tate, thank you, Rolanda. Yes. Yeah. Luca Lampariello sometimes talks about that fact of learning sounds before. We've already said about scaffolding and bite-sized goals. Yes, absolutely. And we've already said, don't study, don't waste your time sitting studying. Go and expose your brain to the language. Go and listen to music, podcasts in the background. Do something else while you're listening. You know, get the subconscious brain absorbing. And moving away from negative emotions. How many of us, when we're with teachers and, you know, educators, we go into that guilt trip of, oh, I didn't do the work. Oh, I should have done more. Oh, I'm really sorry. How can we move away from that? How can we as educators not provoke that they're feeling that? How can we help them move away from the guilt of not being able to learn? I think it's about recognizing just how busy and how stressed people are nowadays. And by the way, I've got to the point as well now where I openly say to people, if I haven't done something or I haven't had time to do something, I actually say to them, I'm sorry, but my brain just couldn't cope with it this week. So I actively now talk about my brain not doing things. And it actually helps me because I separate my emotions from that statement. My brain couldn't cope, my brain didn't have time, my brain was overloaded, my brain wasn't able to deal with that information. It really does help. Immersion, let's go through this in a little bit of a list. We've already said phone and computer, podcasts, movies, TV shows. You know, on YouTube and on many of these platforms, you get subtitles, titles. When I was learning the languages in my youth, we didn't have any of this. Nowadays, the devices, the gadgets, the availability to learn multiple languages is incredible. Reading the news, internet, doing your daily tasks in another language, doing your daily hobbies in another language. If you do yoga every day, why not do it in the language that you're learning? If you're doing something else every day, why not do it in the language you're learning? If you do Zumba class, why not do it in the language that you're learning? Things like that. Getting into routines means that you're going to get the brain into relevant, personally relevant for you. You know, some companies even have this concept of Fun Friday in English. Ingrid, when I was in Germany, a lot of companies had that Fun Friday. And it could be something that you think about at home. Could you have a fun target language day with your family or your partner? It could be very funny if they don't speak any of that target language, but maybe they can start learning with you. But again, you know, getting the brain into that positive brain space, fun, dopamine, endorphins. That means the brain's going to always connect that language with the joy of learning. Ingrid, it's Tuesday's English lunch. I love it. Yes, yes, absolutely. Some more tips and tricks. Drumming. Drumming apparently is connecting us to the rhythm of language. Just out of curiosity, did any of you learn Latin? Larissa, I see, I think a hand there. Alexandra, yes. Ingrid, yes. Can you remember, and obviously for me, this was at school, we used to kind of do it like drumming, you know, amor, amas, amat, you know, you had the kind of rhythm of, I can still hear those drills in my brain. If you are learning something that is able to go into that rhythm, by the way, there's a brilliant rapper in France who does a lot of English learning through rap. And the kids love it. Ina, you studied Latin as well, yes, at uni. Marissa, at uni. Larissa, at uni, yes, 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 yes. Yeah, so what part of the language that they're learning could you help them to get into that rhythm, that they can go away and rhythm it out by themselves? Chanting as well. Chanting is the same. It's engaging the rhythm, the motor processing, and it helps to remember. And to all of you who have learners who like to read aloud, I remember one of my coaches years ago saying, Rachel, I would have never thought about that because I hate it. Actually, there is science behind it because apparently we like to listen to our own voice. We take more notice of our own voice than of anybody else's. So maybe reading aloud and talking to self is actually key. Hearing internal dialogue tricks the brain to focus on words. So if you're learning a new language, start talking to yourself in it, see what happens. I always like to experiment with things. I think that's given me an idea to experiment with this over the next 3 months with the languages I'm learning to see if it has an effect. And exercise. Exercise while learning. Going for a run while you're listening to maybe podcasts. I used to go running listening to Michel Thomas. However, I have to say that, how many of you know of Michel Thomas? Anybody? Yes. Michel Thomas used to help a lot of actors actually to learn a language fast. And he does go into that, connecting with cognates, connecting with easy, repeatable words. So in language, there are certain words and verbs and expressions that are constantly repeated. And he really focused on that to get you up and running, speaking very quickly. And the only problem I had with the Michel Thomas tapes or recordings is the fact that they are very directive. They are so much like teachers. And after a time, I have to turn it off because it really gets my amygdala screaming. But apart from that, I used to love it. Anna Paula, go out and try to find people who are speaking a different language and chat. Yes, Agnes, singing and doing simultaneously? Yes, adults as well, not only children. Yes. By the way, exercising is going to get the motor processing going as well. And there's a lot of research at the moment connecting exercise with effective learning. And I think we're going to see over the next years more research coming out about that and the effectiveness of moving and learning at the same time. Total physical response, yes, absolutely. And de-stressing the learning. We started today saying normalizing the learning, absolutely. Including target language when you are relaxing. Remember, when you're relaxing, when you're sitting on the sofa last thing at night and you start to go into that sort of dreamy state, you're going into those alpha and theta brain states. Your subconscious brain is starting to kick in. So if you're watching the TV or whatever, or doing something at that time of night, they always say, by the way, the best time of night the best time to learn is before you go to sleep, because then the brain is processing while you're sleeping. So in your rest time, including the target language is quite, I'm going to say impacting, because you're in the relaxed brain states. Having clear goals, finding out the learning activities, getting curious, I've already said about this, have fun, evoke positive emotions, and going into models like the feeling model. Feeling model is to really check in with their commitment, help them not to feel guilty. Some of you know that model. I do it on some of the courses. So we've had a little look at all the things that we can do. I think all of you can create your brain hacks program for your learners. And I think it's about you sitting with your learners and really checking in. What's going to help you to learn faster here? Remember, everybody's different. It's going to be worthwhile talking it through with them. And moving now to finalize, we are just going to show the slides of Neurolanguage Coaching. Obviously for the language specialization, and on the left side you have the NeuroHeart education, which is for the teachers of any topic, any discipline. And we are going to be announcing in a couple of weeks the Academy. Gary was saying to me that it's the 7th of May. Sorry, I think I said the 6th earlier. 7th of May, Sunday the 7th at 7 o'clock in the evening. So we've got 7 and 7, so that you remember. 7 in Spain, by the way. And we will be looking at presenting some of those courses as well. And we know that Neurolanguage coaches definitely are catalysts, facilitators, sounding boards. That's what you are. Very structured, but also very much into that spontaneity of the coaching presence all the time. And if any of you are interested to become a Neurolanguage coach, we are one of the only courses worldwide with the accreditation from the ICF, the International Coach Federation. The first course is 36 hours, which you can put towards becoming a life coach if you're ever interested to become a life coach. Those credits are, well, they stand with you through life, actually. You always have those credits. And I have to change the slide because we're now just over 1,400 Neurolanguage coaches around the world, step by step, and a beautiful, amazing, like-minded network of language professionals. We just came together a few weeks ago in Sitges, and we had a bit of a heart explosion there. All of us that were there, it was an amazing experience. We will be doing, let me just tell you now, we will be doing the NeuroHeart Education Conference will be on the 9th and 10th of June. I'm finalizing next week the agenda. So the 9th and 10th of June, we will be doing, the 9th will be in the afternoon and the 10th will be in the morning. So it's a Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, and it will be free to the world, online, and we have some amazing speakers coming in. Again, we always have amazing speakers, but definitely worthwhile. We will be opening up that community chat with the NeuroHeart Foundation in the background. We'll also be sort of getting you to connect in with each other and have conference buddies and have that experience online. And next year in Sitges, we will be again with the Neurolanguage conference. We will be announcing the dates for that. We already did announce the dates when we were there, but we will be announcing the dates so that you can all get that into your agendas. And we will start to see if we can help that sort of process of little by little working towards getting the accommodation so that we try to get you all with the cheaper accommodation before the prices go up and the cheaper flights before the flights go up through the year. So we're going to move in a minute to open the microphones, check in how you are, what you all think to the brain hacks, anything that you think could be added to that list of brain hacks. Do connect with us if you have any questions. And if you want to check out all the courses, we in fact have 32 teacher trainers across the world. And they deliver the course in 12 different languages. And we will be increasing those languages this year. I think by the end of this year, they will be in fact be 15 different languages that we're delivering across the world. Plus the teacher trainers are delivering the NeuroHeart educational coach course, not only the language coaching course. So do check out on the webpage if you want to do the course in any of the other languages, you can. There's quite a few coming up. There's some in French, Ukrainian, Polish, I believe, coming up over the next few months. And if you're interested, we have a morning course starting on Monday. If anybody wants to take the jump, Monday the 24th, we will be starting a new course. And then I have an evening course 8th of May, and Claire has another morning course starting on the 23rd.